It's time for EdTech Mondays, brought to you by MasterCard Foundation and CC Hub.
Over the years, Nigeria has introduced several policy and financing mechanisms aimed at accelerating learning access and improving educational outcomes, including leveraging technology to achieve these objectives. Two examples of these provisions are the Universal Service Provision Fund and the Universal Basic Education Matching Grant. The Universal Service Provision Fund, established under the Nigerian Communications Act, was designed to expand telecommunications access to underserved and unserved communities. Through initiatives such as the Rural Broadband and School Connectivity Projects, the USPF has supported connectivity infrastructure in remote regions, helping to address digital exclusion at a foundational level. In parallel, the Universal Basic Education Commission, UBEC, administers federal intervention funding through the UBE Matching Grant scheme. Under this framework, the federal government allocates funds annually to states that provide counterpart contributions. These resources are primarily targeted at closing infrastructure gaps, strengthening teacher development, and increasingly supporting digital learning initiatives. This raises an important question. Are these provisions effectively positioned to enable scalable EdTech adoption? Let's see as we discuss this in this episode. Welcome to the March edition of the EdTech Mondays Nigeria show. EdTech Mondays is a show in which we have critical conversations about leveraging technology for teaching and learning. I'm Nisi Madu, and I'm going to be your host for today, managing partner at CC Hub. And for this March theme of the EdTech Mondays show, we will be discussing powering learning everywhere, partnerships that scale EdTech adoption. And this month, we'll be attempting to answer key questions around what critical partnerships are important for digital learning in Nigeria, how are priorities set, and how can innovators align with these systems. On today's episode specifically, we'll be discussing funding pathways that support EdTech infrastructure, connectivity, and digital learning expansion. We'll be examining how learning access is financed at scale, looking closely at USPF and UBEC and how investment priorities are determined and how innovation is embedded in all of these approaches. By the end of this conversation, our hope is that we'll be able to clarify how public funding mechanisms and drive partnerships for digital learning and also enable measurable impact across various funding systems. I will go straight into introducing our guests for today. Our first guest is the Special Advisor to the Honorable Minister of Education on Science, Technology, Engineering, Mathematics, and Medical Sciences, STEM, and Corporate Engagement. She's an education policy strategist and social innovator dedicated to advancing STEM integration across Africa's education systems. Her work centers on aligning education with sustainable development priorities with a strong emphasis on equity, gender inclusion, and future-ready skills. She was previously the Special Advisor on Education Policy Formulation and Human Capital Development to the Governor of Kwara State and the Senior Special Assistant on Education to the Governor of Lagos State. Dr. Salau, you're welcome. Our second guest is an education policy strategist and systems architect with over 2 decades of experience spanning educational administration, policy reform, and international development. He currently serves as Director, Teacher Professional Development at the Universal Basic Education Commission, UBEC, where he leads strategic initiatives to strengthen teacher quality across Nigeria. He has managed large-scale education programs across Nigeria's 36 states and the FCT, contributing to reforms that have impacted millions of learners. Welcome, Dr. Awesome. Dr. Awesome, you're welcome.
It's my pleasure to also note that UBEC is invited to this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And we are also joined by Daniel Aduku, the Programs Director at Kodorina Education and Technology Foundation, where he leads the design and delivery of coding, robotics, and AI programs across schools in Nigeria. Passionate about expanding equitable access to technology education, his work focuses on bridging innovation, partnerships, and inclusion. Daniel has been instrumental in developing inclusive STEM initiatives for learners with special education needs, adapting robotics and digital skills curricula to ensure meaningful participation for every child. Daniel, you're welcome.
All right, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Brilliant. So we're going to go straight into the conversation. And my first question is going to be for you, Dr. Salau, and for Dr. Osom. So we'll start with Dr. Salau, and then Dr. Osom will also respond. And the first question is around helping us and the audience understand what sort of provisions exist within the Federal Ministry of Education, within UBEC, for providing digital learning infrastructure across schools in Nigeria. Can you tell us a bit about that?
We have lots of provisions around this. We have various programs and quite a number of them at UBEC. We have a zero rated data program right now for teachers where we're partnering with private partners to provide support with our learning platforms, as well as support so that the teachers pay nothing for data so that they can go online, boost their capacity, gain access to lessons, gain access to videos, things that they can now bring back and utilize for their students. We have lots of programs and we have devices that have been sponsored by various funding partners, the World Bank, just to name a few. I mean, I could keep going on and on. We have a lot of these programs that are being rolled out and you hear more about them. We also have programs, of course, here to my heart, STEM programs you're going to be hearing about, I believe, either at the end of Q1 or the beginning of Q2, around boosting the science teachers, setting up programs in pilot schools with the teachers, mentorship programs. So we have things already that are already in the pipeline. Some of them are already ongoing, and then some of them will also be rolled out for the public to hear, or not that they are not even already in play, but the public has not heard about them, like the one I mentioned about end of Q1 and Q2. Programs like that, you'll be hearing and seeing more of them. There are a lot of things that we've been working on behind the scenes for the past 18 months under the Renewed Hope agenda. And I like to call it, actually, it's not I like to call it, it is a program that we've called the Nursery Agenda at the Ministry, which encompasses all these various things that we want to do and we keep hearing about. So we're looking at the best practices that are taking place in the world. More emphasis on data, more emphasis on making decisions on data. So you'll be hearing a lot more about our data initiatives. And of course, you just mentioned digital learning, digital literacy. I can't say all this without emphasizing the fact that there's a lot that we're doing around digital literacy, and you'll be hearing a lot of more programs in regards to that. I believe it was at the beginning of February. Yes, at the beginning of February, there was a lot of a buzz in the online, Twitter, X, I still call it Twitter, but X, TikTok, who am I missing now? IG, about a teacher program where teachers were gifted really, really good sums of money about a lot of the work that they were doing with their students. And they were, I want to call it celebrated, because that's what it was. These teachers were celebrated about the good work they did. And during that event, we spoke a lot about these digital literacy programs that we're rolling out all the way from elementary, which is primary school, junior secondary, and of course, senior secondary. So there's a lot of programs, a lot of things that are being done. Let me stop there because I can keep going on and on.
Thank you so much, Dr. Salau. There are two key things that I've highlighted from what you shared, and we're going to have an opportunity to double down on that. One is you talked very critically, or you highlighted partnerships. And, there'll be subsequent conversations around partnerships and why that's important. The second one, you talked about data as one of the priority areas in terms of these provisions across various projects, and we'll also have time to dig in a bit deeper into that. Before we continue the conversation, are you an EdTech innovator or founder designing inclusive education technology solutions? Applications for Cohort 4 of the Mastercard Foundation EdTech Fellowship are now open. If you're building solutions for learners living with disabilities, forcibly displaced persons, or learners in rural communities, solutions focused on young girls and women, and solutions focused on education and skills data, this is a great opportunity. Selected startups would receive product development support, market access, and equity-free funding. If this aligns with a solution that you're building or someone you know, please visit futureoflearning.cityhub.africa to apply or learn about the fellowship. Now, let's go back to the conversation. Dr. Awesome, over to you, sir, on provisions within UBEC specifically for powering digital learning across the country.
Yeah, thank you so much. And just to build on what Dr. Salau has said, the Universal Basic Education Act 2004 mandates UBEC to receive 2% of the Consolidated Revenue Fund and provide from this fund support to states so they can deliver on basic education. Again, it's important to note that the responsibility for education service provision at the basic level is basically that of the local governments and the states. But the law provides an opportunity for the federal government to be able to provide interventions. And I want to really emphasize the word interventions in basic education delivery. And within the ambit of the mandates of UBEC, education technology and the adoption of digital profiles for education delivery is not just an add-on, but it's properly embedded within what UBEC does, what SUBEBs do, SUBEBs, State Universal Basic Education Boards, what the local government education authorities do in terms of ICT and data collection, in terms of the assurance of quality, in terms of the provision of adequate infrastructure that support EdTech adoption. And beyond that is the issue of entrenching this and instituting this within the curriculum practices, and importantly, for teacher professional development. I should say that for the current situation that we are in implementing basic education, states have access to the matching grant. The matching grant provides that while the federal government provides a segment or a basket of fund, states would match that fund and utilize it for basic education delivery. Currently, we have 75% of that fund allocated for infrastructure and TLMs. The TLM is basically teaching learning materials. And for what we're doing currently, this involves digital teaching, digital learning materials. And to support this, we have about 5% of that fund allocated for ICT and data collection. We have about 5% also for quality assurance. We have about 2% for curriculum issues, training, and tracking of implementation. So all this is pointing to the fact that unlike before, the federal government and its related agencies are focusing on transiting from those orthodox modes of learning to the new paradigms, which EdTech is key. And it's something that we ought to emphasize and emphasize again, that this is happening within our time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Awesome. You've really highlighted critical, things like explaining how the matching funds work and explaining also how that is focused on, what percentage of that is focused on digital learning infrastructure, and how these intervention funds also guide SUBEBs in, being able to implement digital learning within their states. Just a follow-on question to this before I come to you, Daniel. And this question is both to you, Dr. Salawa and Dr. Awesome, is, as we know, when it has to do with empowering millions of young people across Nigeria with the skills required to build the future, you need to have priorities, right? Because at each point in time, there needs to be a focus on what is it we can fund, what can't we fund, what are the gaps, and where would we put in the funds to give us the best results. And so from your perspective, how do you decide on what priorities or what gaps exist to channel these intervention funds or this program towards? And this question is to, is to help highlight things, to say, is for two things. It demonstrates areas where further partnerships are required, but then also helps the audience understand, how the government decides what critical areas, to channel the funds for digital learning. So perhaps, Dr. Salau, you can highlight, you talked about certain programs. How did you come about the focus on this? You talked about data. What were some of the key things from your perspective that was seen to ensure to decide that these were the programs or the areas to focus on?
From my experience from Lagos State, and of course now here at WAR, and now here at federal level, anyone who wants to sit down and plan out an agenda has to engage stakeholders that have already been working on these issues. And those were some of the things that we did. And when you engage them, by the time you listen to what are the pain points, what are the areas that they believe should be stressed more, that gives you a working plan that, okay, these are things that are really, really critical. And then you also, well, for us, we did a lot of research around what are the best practices, what do we see other educational systems do out there that we would love to model and replicate. I mean, of course, within our own context, because you can't copy and paste and expect it's going to deliver the same thing for you. And when that was done, one of the key things that was discovered was a lot of these places, the decisions that were made were based upon data. So, of course, realizing that meant we needed to make a powerhouse sector in everything that we do, a section, a division just about data. Right now, as I'm speaking to you, we have, what do I even call it? An information dashboard, a portal that has all this data. I mean, I wish I had it on my WhatsApp right now. I shared the screen, but I've seen it. It gives us information about the primary schools, secondary schools, number of teachers, gender breakdown of the number of teachers, things like that. I mean, it's amazing and it's fantastic. And we're working with UNICEF right now to even make that a much, much deeper dive into learning outcomes. Another one that was really key was TVET, skilling up this our youth in vocational training, vocational learning. And all of these are actually valid concerns. How do we mitigate that? The only way to mitigate that is to boost the capacity of the people who we have here and to have advocacy around our youth gaining those skills. So for the last, actually it's more than 12 months. Yeah, it's about 16 months, 16, 18 months. We've had really, really dogged agenda around TVET, registering our students, them going to centers and gaining these skills, and also having specific programs tailored out for them. I mean, it's fantastic. I went to one of the centers, give me a minute, I think that was November or December last year, with the Honorable Minister when we were launching and commissioning the center. And I was overwhelmed and really, really happy because this is something I have championed for a long time. When I was in the oil and gas industry, I went to Germany and I was working on a gas plant that time. And I went to Germany, we were going to go and learn best practices. We were telling them to come back, to come and help us duplicate some of the things we saw at that plant. And I was talking to the youth who were working on that plant. And one of the beautiful things that I gained from that trip was a lot of them did not go to university. But here they were able to have good livings. They were able to work with their hands. They were able to contribute to their economies. And I said, we should be able to do that here too. Not everybody is going to become quote unquote engineer from the university, but they should be able to be plumbers and be certified, which is what this TVET program that we're running be able to do for our youth here. So those kind of programs are the programs that when we sat down with stakeholders, we were able to say, you know what, let's have this kind of program. I mentioned TVET, I mentioned data. What am I missing? Something really, of course, digital learning, which I just mentioned. Let me stop at that 3, because like I said, I'll keep going on and on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salau.
I guess your question was around how we make decisions on what to do in respect of EdTech. From the perspective of UBEC, technology in basic education is considered something that's very important. What UBEC does is to ensure that it is structured, it is properly funded, routinely monitored, and aligned with learning outcomes. So That's to be sure that whatever is done in terms of EdTech deployment is in strategic alignment with UBEC strategic pillars. Currently, what we're doing is to work towards expanding access. We are doing quality of teaching and learning. We are doing reforms that strengthen UBEC financing and utilization of same. And we are also looking at optimizing institutional systems to support quality learning in a sustainable manner. So what UBEC does is that first and foremost, whenever it wants to provide an intervention, it conducts a needs assessment. And from the results of such needs assessment, the priority areas are identified, and then the key interventions that suit such needs are also put in place. I should say that currently UBEC has a smart school in all the 36 states and the FCT. These schools, though of different models, were established to provide a platform for learners within structured environments, a kind of cluster, so that it could serve as hubs for nearby schools in terms of technology adoption and integration. So first and foremost, we do the needs assessment, and then we do that to identify the kind of learning that is required, the kind of infrastructure that's supposed to be deployed, the kind of funding models for it. And like Dr. Adetola said earlier, this cannot be done in isolation because, as you know, this is a public entity. You cannot provide all the resources that's required. Even if you have all the resources, you don't have all the expertise. Even if you have all the expertise, you don't have all the coordinatory ability. So this is done in partnership. And very clearly, the FME provides the leadership and the direction. Development partners are available to support. CSOs are there to monitor, and funding partners are there to see what is the gap and how can they provide complementary assistance that can ensure that success is attained in this direction. I think this is what I would like to say in response to your earlier question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Osman. Just eager to summarize, highlighting a few things from your response, Dr. Osman, and Dr. Salau's response as well. Starting from me, Dr. Osman, is that there's a needs assessment that is conducted, and that sets, priorities. And then those priorities are accordingly, aligned with. Of course, bearing in mind, like you said, even if you have all of the resources, even if you have all of the time, you can't do everything. And even then, you still need to make sure that you're aligning to all of the priorities that have been highlighted. And Dr. Salau, you mentioned TVET, you mentioned teachers, you mentioned data, and those are very important things. Daniel, I'll come to you quickly. I know that Code Arena exists to address certain gaps in connectivity and access for learners in schools when it has to do with digital learning. Can you talk a bit about that and talk even more about the partnership with USPF and what gaps specifically that you're addressing through the Impact Alliance?
So Codrina is very passionate about inspiring young innovators, and we've been doing this since like 2013. So over the years, we have had a lot of interventions in schools, and we prioritize underserved areas and regions because it feels like those are the people that we don't want to help because of the inconveniences that come along with going to those regions to help those people. So when this partnership with USPF came around again, so we wanted to take a new dimension. We discovered that the special needs institutes, they're always neglected because they feel it's difficult to engage them. So we decided, okay, why not take up this new challenge? We have been doing this over and over again. We have gone to remote areas to reach out to schools that we feel don't have these opportunities. But if there's one thing we have not really turned our focus to is like the special needs, because we believe probably they can't measure up. So, but we wanted to take it as a chance and to test how well we can intervene there. And when USPF came up with this partnership, why not? We decided to take it up. So working with them, obviously we know that we are not experts in working with people that have these special needs. So we like to call them exceptional learners. So what we decided to do was we had to partner with the teachers in the school because they are the experts. They know how to transfer this knowledge to their learners. So if we go there that we want to get direct access to the learners, we may not do it as efficient as they would. So we had that training session with them. And so one of the things we also discovered is that for programs to succeed, then the willingness from these teachers have to also stand out. So we normally start with a lot of teachers, and then some of them, the willingness is not there anymore, but we always thankful that we end up with a good number that always with us on the journey to the very end. So for the Impact Alliance, we had some schools we visited. Some are like there was one in Surulere for the partially blinded children and learners. So we engage the teachers, and some teachers are even in touch with us till today. So, and another thing we always look at very well is sustainability. We don't want to just come into a school and then after the pilot, that's all. No, we want to go beyond the intervention phase. So, and there's a very good story I would like to say after this whole program. So there are some teachers that fell in love so much with the program. They loved how digital learning has made learning easy for everybody, helps them to even engage their learners more. And they were already excited about the possibility of bringing these skills back to the learners. And some of the coaches actually, we call them coaches because once we train you, believe you're now a coach to pass that knowledge along. So they reached out and they're like, I love this program so much. I want to do it beyond my school. So if you have any other initiative training as well, please let us know. And some of them have been put along with our own trainers to go out to do other trainings as well. So, and that is really encouraging from that intervention. So USPF have been really helpful. They have given us the opportunity, because like I always say, most of what we do, we can do better if we get this partnership from like government institute, because we don't have the access to just go in. But when they give us, we can leverage on that access to engage more. So I think I'll just take a break.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Daniel. So essentially highlighting that your partnership with USPF and the Impact Alliance basically gave you the access that you need. And that type of access is really critical for scaling your solutions and driving adoption. As we conclude today's episode, one thing is clear. Nigeria has established various structures and provisions for digital learning across schools in the country. But financing alone does not guarantee innovation integration. It's important that we take time to identify critical areas, gaps, and challenges, and ensure that these provisions are aligned to address these gaps, these priorities, and these opportunities. So we leave you with this. If funds are allocated annually for education, what structural changes are needed to ensure digital learning is not treated as an add-on, but as a core education system priority? What critical areas of education or digital learning do you think funding should prioritize? Share your thoughts with us in the comments, on social media, or through our direct message channels via SMS or WhatsApp at 0703 165 0809 or call 0706 402 0742. Remember, you can continue this discussion on our WhatsApp and Telegram channels, EdTech Mondays Nigeria. And don't forget, past episodes are always available on Spotify, EdTech Mondays Nigeria, and YouTube, CC Hub Africa. Your feedback will help shape the conversations we host and policy dialogues we advocate for.
Tech Mondays, brought to you by MasterCard Foundation and CC Hub.